Good afternoon. Scott Nocon joined as always with Sheriff Rich Stanek. And this week, very pleased to have Sheriff John Allen from Bernalillo County in New Mexico. So I know you're on the road and we won't ask you to divulge your current whereabouts, but in that regard, again, Sheriff, glad to meet you and looking forward to a conversation today. So welcome.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Growing up, what were your influences and what got you down the path to where you're at today?
Where I was today, I always wanted to be when I was going to school and I was a young boy. I always wanted to be a heart surgeon.
Hmm.
And as through school, growing up through high school, there's a lineage in my family of law enforcement. My dad was
Okay.
in the New Mexico State Police. My Aunt Jerry was in Albuquerque Police Department. I have family in corrections. And an uncle who worked in Fresno PD as a lieutenant. So as I was growing, everything I've always said no to in my life, such as this position, I said I wouldn't do. I actually do it. So I never want to be in law enforcement probably until I was probably in college.
Okay.
And in my first year in college, I had a hidden gym job. I was an equipment manager for the University of New Mexico Lobo football team.
Okay.
And during this time, the Lobos had with a program with the Albuquerque Police Department on bringing college recruits or athletes over to their agency. And as I started to know certain athletes, I knew people like Terrence Mathis and popular people who played in the NFL, but there'd be a group of guys that would come back to practice this after they graduated and they were in APD uniform. So I started asking them about the job. And I really wanted to do it after speaking with them. I really wanted to make a difference. I could not stand college. I actually left early when I decided to take a career in law enforcement. I gave it my full ride athletic scholarship. And I went to test in 1996 for the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office. And I took a risk. I failed the stretching exam. And through my life, I always told my dad I would never be in the New Mexico State Police because I was a city boy. I didn't
Yeah.
want to be stationed somewhere in a rural area. Well, I'll never forget at Milne Stadium, I failed. My brother met me. I was crying like a baby. I was probably 20 years old at the time. And I had to decide I had to go to the New Mexico State Police. And I did that and graduated the academy in December 12th of 1997.
Okay.
But it was such a blessing because that's where I met my wife up in Las Vegas, New Mexico. But I knew someday that I would want to go back to the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office. And I did that and lateraled in 2001. And from there, I moved up pretty quickly. I started on patrol, and then I said I would never be a detective in homicide. I became a detective in homicide. Said I would never be on special weapons and tactics. I did that for years and became a supervisor over it. And I said, on my first day in my state police academy, they said, who one day wants to be a chief or the leader of an agency? And I was in the front row. And I rose my hand and said, absolutely not, never. I'll always be on patrol. And here I am now to this day. So and to answer your question, in 2014, I know I've listened to a lot. I didn't like what my predecessor was doing, but how I was raised, if you don't like something, do something yourself and make
Yeah.
a difference. Don't mind it. This 2014, I didn't really know exactly how to be a leader of an agency. I was still far out from retirement, but in 2018 and 19, it came into fruition, and then I decided to paint it. Wow, what an eye opener! Difficult, but I had 8 opponents in my primary, but it really taught me and what I wanted to do and how to treat others. I really learned from just not my predecessor, but how to really treat people and treat the sheriff's office as a business, and to make sure that people were happy and to serve our constituents and the people that I work for. Being a sheriff is such a blessing because you have to do it all. And
Yeah.
I got to meet people like Sheriff Stanek, and this has been a great journey for me.
No, that's terrific. So, how many years in office?
So I'm finishing my first term in
Okay.
this January. I'm in re-election now, but the good news is all I had was a primary. I just won that overwhelmingly by about 72% of
Congratulations.
the vote. So I am in. I have a general. I'm officially on the ballot, but I do not have an opponent. So
Okay.
I'm already looking into my second term, and I already had my initiatives. So we're moving forward already with those.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Um, so in that you made mention that your predecessor and it's a I would say it's a common enough theme, right, Sheriff Stanek, that, I want to do better, right? I want to do better based on what came before me. I want to do better for the community. In that, as you head into your second term, what challenges were you faced early on? And then as you head into your second term, what challenges do you still see in front of you?
The challenges early on was I retired as a sergeant. So all the naysayers and the doubters, which I love, I actually really like negative people. Keeps an index card and gives me my drive. I actually look for it.
There we go. I like that.
Weird kind of person. But pretty much the challenges were getting buy-in, first of all. And the rank and file is probably one of your most important, of course. But I saw how we were so behind in technology and how we weren't getting funding. The biggest problem was we didn't have any ties with the legislature or anything in politics to make a difference with bills that affect the state, with funding and capital outlay. There really wasn't a voice in the office. It was always, everything was so siloed and we didn't communicate with anybody. And that's how it was with our community also. And then everybody started talking about reform. I started running 2020 doing the George Floyd. I was teaching at the CNM Law Enforcement Academy at the time. And I studied every video and everything that happened and the negative things that came out of those stories and the facts that weren't there. But how could I run my agency if something like that happened? And how to reform all of law enforcement, just not in Bernalillo County, but how do I really affect and help people nationally and get advice? I have mentors. I have people that I speak to all over the nation. How could I move forward? And while we were doing that, a lot of deputies said, "Hey, we really respected you when you were here. You took care of your people. You always told the truth. I'm a very straightforward person." And that's what I do as sheriff. I'm very, whether it's discipline and accountability, I tell people right away, you're in the wrong and we will take care of it there. And I just don't wait for the whole chain of command to take care of things in some scenarios, but also make it a teaching moment because, look, we're held accountable to the people that we serve. We need to have trust. Once you lose trust in your agency with the community, it's very difficult to bring back. And transparency. I am so transparent. Sometimes it is not gone the way I want it because I'm so transparent. So I reel it back just a little bit. But the public and media, they're not used to that. But now they're really enjoying it. I'm all over our social media. I tell them everything that we're doing.
Yeah.
Even here when I'm traveling, telling them what I'm doing with whether it's taxpayer money or not. But what is the goal? And that's very important for people to understand.
No, Scott, you've heard me say this before, but I get a chance to meet sheriffs all over the country, big agencies, small agencies, rural, metro, you name it. One thing that I always appreciate, and the first time I get a chance to meet Sheriff John Allen at the Major County Sheriffs Association, was he came in, he was real, just as you see him now, casually dressed and, just puts it out there, but also the staff that he brought with him. The staff that he hired. It's not easy to find a command staff that'll work with you on behalf of your vision for the agency. And John, I'm hoping, Sheriff, I'm sorry, you can talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about Holly and the others that are in your command staff and how you make those choices. I always liken it to putting a franchise team out there. You might lose a few along the way, but you're trying to find the right mix to get the job done.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate the compliments. The biggest thing, you're only as good as your team that's around you. And I will tell you, my undersheriffs and my major, they do so much work. Of course, I'm the leader of the agency and get a lot of credit, but without them and the work that they put in, I wouldn't be here sitting in front of you. That's the most important thing. And my philosophy has always been, I work for you, they don't work for me. And we're a family. We're very close. But yes, Major Holly Anderson, our now undersheriff that I promoted her last year. She's amazing. She came from the Albuquerque Police Department. The reform that I was speaking with earlier, she was part of some of the DOJ consent decree that APD went through. So I wanted some of that knowledge to make sure we were on the right path. And we've been friends for a while. We worked homicide for years together, different agencies, but always were on the same scene at times. And my other undersheriff, Aaron Williamson, he's been a friend of mine since I lateraled to this agency in 2001. And we spoke about this. He just never believed me. But what he didn't know is I was watching him his whole career, even though we were good friends, and his leadership ability. And he was really good. Holly's great in operations. Aaron's strength is great in administration and budget and fleet. And then the major I just brought over, Pat Burke, who all of you will see soon as you bring him out to these conferences. We served in SWAT and everything together, and our kids grew up together. He retired and went to the UNM police department. I brought him back and he was surprised, but not because they're friends. There's people, a sheriff, you need someone around you that can trust, but their work ethic, I know they can communicate, they can articulate. They're all about teamwork, just not giving the credit to themselves. They are a blessing to have. And when I took over this office, we were not, and Sheriff Stanek just said it, I never thought like, hey, we're going to be known nationally. I'm going to go national and be popular. Never thought anything of it. I went to one conference. I think it was National Sheriff's Association in my second year. I didn't bring my command staff, and everybody's like, hey, where's your command staff? Where's Holly, Aaron, and Pat? And from there, I bring them all over the place now because I'll offend people if I don't. So great team that I have.
No, that's great. That's great. In that, going into now your preparing for your second term, and being in the community, and I love what you had to say about like serving the community, right? What we're here, we're of service constantly. I'm kind of pointing myself. I'm not in law enforcement, but I know within my organization, want to lead in the same way. So in that, how have you approached? And has it presented challenges, and have there been certain wins you want to highlight in balancing enforcement with community expectations?
Yes. So one of the biggest things we did, and I'm here in Austin now speaking about drones, was when I took over the office, our technology, we were back in 2005 when I took office in 2023. So I knew what I wanted. I was speaking about drones during my campaign. At the time, they weren't as popular, but I was doing research for a very long time on drones and what they could do. And then look where we are now. But just in terms of software to make a detective or a patrolman, a deputy's job just easier as far as, looking for somebody in crime, but community buy-in. Look, we have the big brother concept. Everybody's worried about license plate readers, drones, the surveillance. It's all about buy-in. And I have a really good relationship, and people think I'm crazy. I have a great relationship with the ACLU. Anything that we do when we're working with the community, I put it out there, and I look at all the negative comments, and I look for constructive criticism, because the constituents, what they're worried about, I want to make sure I was the first sheriff that had town halls.
Yeah.
I wanted them to yell at me, to get their emotions off their chest, give me ideas, but also tell them what we're doing. Because if you don't have the buy-in from your community, you're always getting so much pushback. It's delaying your agenda. And I wanted to make sure that we started before we implemented anything. And of course, we had the negative comments, but I said, next is we have to prove with what we're doing. I can say all the great words, but if we don't put the actionable items and results behind it, it's not going to work. So now I'm looked at by our legislatures to testify. I'm doing that next week once again, to talk about license plate readers, drones, what we're doing, what it's solving. We're not spying on people. That's with any program that we do. And one of the biggest things that people, they look at us for technology, but we're probably the first in the region and the state for my behavioral health unit. I hired a behavioral health clinical manager. And we have a tri-response. And what's important about that is that we're giving, it's not a narcotic, but we have a paramedic, we have a clinician, he goes and registered ER for schizophrenia, bipolar, and we have forensic case managers. It's really helping us out in terms of keeping the stress off of emergency rooms. So that's the initiatives will continue to my second term.
Scott, well, he opened, Sheriff Allen opened the door to the T word. So let me just dig down a little bit about technology, because one thing we see with all of our guests on these podcasts have been about technology, just how much it's changed since the day you walked on the job to where you are now as the sheriff, ending your first term, about ready to start your second term. And, you're out in Austin talking about drones. I assume you probably have a DFR program, or looking at a DFR, which is a drone as a first responder. And, it's still a fairly new concept in this country. So tell us about it. Tell us about what Bernalillo County is doing and how you fit into that.
Yeah, we do have drones as a first responder. So when we started the drone program, it was basically out of trunks. We had a couple drones, but we saw what we were seeing. And I really wanted to do a drone as a first responder, but I didn't look at the program right away to say, hey, we want to cut down time on calls when we arrive. I really wanted to look at it as more of intelligence based. We had a lot of deputy involved shootings that were controversial when I was a detective. So my philosophy was, what intel could we give any deputy responding to a call to have that information before they arrive to make the correct decision and have the appropriate resources there? That's what the first concept was about. And as we move forward, it started going really fast with DFR, and we're doing a lot of work with Skydio. When we first started, it was all over national news. I never saw this in my career, 7 and a 9-year-old with a firearm trying to shoot at our deputies. Mm-hmm. We were watching it. I saw that we saved a 7 and a 9-year-old's life. That case expanded beyond what those children needed and what was going on in that household with repeated violent offenders. But from there, it really expanded, and I wanted to bring more in, and I was all in. And I went to the legislature for money, for funding to expand it. And now that we have all our pods and our drones are getting to calls about 62% before our deputies, and it's cutting down on our call time. It's already cut it down by 2 minutes, and our deputies love it, and so do our dispatchers. At first, dispatchers didn't like it. It was something different for them. When you say the T word, it's a change in law enforcement. A lot of people don't like that right away, but it had buy-in right away because it gave them eyes on the scene and resources. And we're pairing that with all the technology we're bringing in, whether it's from Axon, Prepared 911. I went down to, before I flew out here yesterday, to our real-time operations center. Our DFR pilots are responding to the call before it even comes out. And we have a video that we put on our social media. We're catching criminals while they are in the act, and they have no clue how our deputies got there so fast. It's amazing to see. We're even having the drones find the firearms for us, and then we can back off and do a search warrant, do things appropriately under the color of law. The money that we've invested, it is 10 times worth it, and we've saved a lot of lives. We actually got an award because of the technology. We brought down lawsuits and deadly force down already by 25 to 26% because of this technology.
Oh, that's incredible. Talk a little bit about, you also mentioned ALPRs. Again, there's a number of different companies out there that sell them to law enforcement. Each has its own unique features and capabilities. But talk about, what you're using there. And I think also you touched a little bit about privacy, civil liberties, being transparent, your relationship with the ACLU. Again, it's really important for the listeners to understand what goes into a decision before an agency head like the sheriff says, hey, this is the direction we're headed. This is what we're going to do on behalf of protecting our communities.
Yeah, my first question before when I was looking at it, was researching at the same time, myself and my command staff. We went to the ACLU, and then a lot of people in the public said, hey, what are your issues and what are your concerns about this? And I want you to look at all the research. I want you to bring up articles. And I said, I want you to specifically look at San Francisco. And I said, because when you look at it, and as the listeners are looking, you've seen California and San Francisco, they're resistant to a lot of technology in other areas. But one thing I noticed about them was San Francisco and the city council, they were probably running ALPRs before anybody, and they were doing it at a fast rate and had buy-in. So all of the spying and the surveillance and the big brother concerns that people had, I addressed those. I told them exactly what we were going to do. And all the vendors that I picked, and I have Flock right now. I have DFR drones through Skydio. I have Axon. I had a huge press conference with all of the top people that came to the press conference from all of my vendors to be transparent and answer every question. That went very far because there was nothing to be hidden. I told the media to answer or to ask off the cuff questions, to be hard on them. And we were very transparent. And if we did find a problem, we said we were going to attempt to fix it and showed them the roadmap to what we would do and what the result was and how we're working. We continue to do that and follow that philosophy. In the state of New Mexico, a lot of people are looking at us as an example, and that's good. Not to say, hey, we're awesome, we're the best. I want to make sure that we're sharing information appropriately with other agencies who don't have the funding to have this technology. If someone comes into my county and they need something, it's a homicide, a missing person, someone with suicidal ideations, they just need to call our real-time operations center, and they have that information at their fingertips. I don't want anybody in the community or any law enforcement personnel getting hurt because they don't have that intel at their fingertips, we are here to share and not be selfish with it. That's very important to me also.
So in that, and again, that's great to hear about the use of technology, and again, talking to different sheriffs across the country. There's some that are more advanced than others, understanding that funding is a key aspect of that. So in that, are there other programs that you are either have started and they're continuing to get more notoriety out there, or are there certain things, dare I say, passion projects, but certainly I can just feel John and Sheriff, pardon me, can be in a relaxed setting in this conversation that you project enthusiasm, just collaboration, just wanting to be one with the people, and it's so great and refreshing to see, because one of the biggest tenets of doing this podcast is to allow everyone to understand that sheriff's a big job. It's an important job, but you're also a person. You have feelings, you have emotions, you have family, you're part of the community. So in that, are there other, and I want you to talk to that in a second, but are there other programs that you either have been able to get off the ground and want to speak to those, or they're on your whiteboard and you go, this is something that I need to get going next?
Yeah, expanding the drone program, looking at other models. And why I say that is I love collaboration. I'm really looking for the funding. We're really helping our Bernalillo County Fire and Rescue. We just helped them with our drones with the fire the other night, and the chief wrote me, and I got to call him after this podcast actually, but they had a huge fire and it had chemicals, all kinds of different problems with hazmat there. We sent our drone unit there and our DFR launched, and it totally switched his game plan, and it helped save injury to his firefighters. Wow. I told the county commission at the time, I was looking when the fires happened in California with the FLIR basically on the drones, or the thermal imaging, excuse me. Look, we can see hot spots and tell your firefighters to start, and we can guide them so they don't get injured. The county manager was like, wait, you're sharing your drones for fire? I said, absolutely. We're a team. We're first responders. We'll help anybody. We've had so many requests just from different counties around New Mexico. So that's why I'm expanding the drone program. Another initiative to answer your question is we started a facial recognition in technology, but I'm doing it a different way. It doesn't go out to everybody. I created an operational intelligence unit, and I went to all the conferences. I went to every class I could as the sheriff. I just don't go and hobnob. I like to learn and act like I'm still in school. But what I learned was from people's mistakes. And that's what's great about the sheriffs around this country. They'll tell you, like, look, here's the mistakes we make, don't make them. And here's some case studies to look at. I looked at all that. And the reason I brought facial recognition, I delayed for 1.5 years. And I told the ACLU this because I knew there was some case law coming out of Illinois and some other areas, but I want it to be small. I didn't need facial recognition for reasonable suspicion, not probable cause. It goes through only a certain amount of detectives, so it stays very controlled. So that way, when ACLU hears my podcast, because I haven't discussed this with them, they know that it's very controlled before we expand a little bit more, because there's still going to be questions about license plate readers. I just had that phone call when I landed today. We have to stay up on different vendors, what new case law is, what mistakes have we made. We got called out by local media, and we're with flock cameras, and I'm so strict and transparent with what we do with license plate readers. It actually bit us in the butt. And someone back from Washington State and California and got a lot of credible intel. But here's what's great. I have a great relationship with our vendors. I called Flock right away, and we corrected it. I didn't drop them. I saw everybody has been freaking out, dropping people. I don't do that. I like to research and give people a chance. We're human, like we spoke to before, and we work on these problems together. And it's really paid off. So now we've learned from some mistakes and what we need to do and what we don't need to do. And that actually shaped one of the state statutes that starts in July 1st in New Mexico on license plate readers and data sharing.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Well, here's a sheriff who's got 3 pieces of technology amongst probably many more, but 3 he just articulated very well. He made the use case He talked about community input. He talked about the transparency, uh, facial recognition, license plate readers, and drones. I mean, all three of them are like, if you travel the country, right? I mean, come on, you think about it, all in one package.
Yeah.
Those are the three that get sheriffs and police chiefs in the most trouble. Most of the time, it's because they're not paying attention to the details in terms of how their personnel are using them, policies that are put in place, reviewing case laws they come down, whether in your jurisdiction or somewhere else, and getting out in front of it. But you apparently are doing all three of these. You're doing it well, and you're doing it to protect your community. What else could you ask for? I can see why you had no opponent in this election cycle,
Right.
and you'll be back for another 4 years. Game over.
No, thanks for that. Honestly, I get so pumped up talking about this stuff. And look, now I really want to, as we see even at major county sheriffs in America or whomever, even smaller town sheriffs, I want to help and give them our mistakes. But I also want to help because, again, some of them don't have funding like I do. So I'm really becoming more involved nationally. I like to get in. I like to be in the hot seat. I really do. I like to get the hard questions because you learn from your mistakes and learn from things, but you learn from so many others because we have different square mileage and terrain in New Mexico, where Bernalillo County is. We have the Parito Mesa, we have mountains, we have an urban area. I spoke about behavioral health, and I speak a lot. I think he's on here to Sheriff Aaron Hansen out of Nebraska. They were looking at behavioral health, so I told my people to call his people. There's nothing we're trying to hide. I want everybody to succeed in the nation. I talked to Sheriff DeWanna Witt. We know what they're dealing with in Minnesota with ICE. I wanted to first encourage her because I know that was probably very difficult and rough for her, but get advice also for myself on, man, if this happens here, she's going to have all the experience. That's what's great about sheriffs around the nation. I love these conferences, just the networking, and everyone talks about, all you guys do is go out to dinner. Yeah, it's a good idea. I love dinner. But I'll tell you, the conversations you have, that's where deals get done. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
But I get a lot of advice and good conversation. And it's great to see my command staff integrate and collaborate with so many other agencies, because you're going to get a personality or two, and I won't name people, that think they're better than everybody. I don't really have that personality. I really like to see us collaborate and learn from each other and really make sure that we're trying to help each other out.
No, that's so true. Yeah, definitely. And being an attendee at a number of these conferences, sure, everyone wants to, be able to get out and enjoy a good meal, but definitely what I've been able to observe is the brotherhood, right, and sisterhood, just being a family, being able to connect, have those conversations. We were able to lead a session just a week ago. Sheriff Stanek participated, as well as a number of sheriffs, related to managing offsite inmate medical costs. And that was more a matter of, sharing stories, sometimes horror stories, but sharing stories, sharing best practices. And one of the things that stood out to me from an NSA, National Sheriff's Association level is, what can we do collectively as, we fall into the vendor space, partner space. I like to use that term more than vendor, but in that regard is what can we do to help get the message out there on a number of topics, this being one of them, but then also, participating and helping, attend other sessions, having good conversations. There was a gentleman that was on the police side from Connecticut, right, Sheriff Stanek, that just having a good conversation. He was, just a really nice guy. There's a lot of nice people, but just sharing that conversation where I wouldn't cross paths. So in that regard is, there's a lot of good intel that comes out of it. There's a lot of good information, but at the same time, layering up, sharing best practices. That's probably the most critical area. And I see a lot of commonality with the sheriffs we've been able to, we've had the pleasure of speaking with. There was a lot of just, dare I say, basic business process organization, but it's running an organization, it's running a company and breaking that down. So it's refreshing to see and hear that constantly. In that, are there you said you could take some of the challenging. I don't know how challenging this question will be, but in that where there's a lot of good collaboration and not naming names, but are there areas when you're out and about in the industry and meeting with different sheriffs that there's differing opinions, not just on technology, which is more maybe selling it to your community, but are there differing opinions that maybe you would like to comment on where I get it, not everyone sees eye to eye, but is there anything that stands out in regard to, dare I say, confrontational, but certainly an area that we probably need to turn the corner a little bit and gain a little bit of a better understanding of certain challenges that exist?
Yeah, you know what? I would probably say more in the training and recruitment arena. I think really in the training area, because when you look at different demographics throughout the country and different areas geographically, training is going to be different, not just because if it's urban or it's square mileage, but probably the philosophy that you see. Everyone's going to say we have the best training, we have the best instructors, and they should. You should always have a healthy competition to become better. That's the common goal for all of us. I would say probably collaborating more to say, hey, you guys are doing this in Georgia, you might be doing this in Minnesota, you might be doing this in California. What probably is the best base foundation for all of law enforcement to learn from? For instance, what's going on in Sheriff DeWanna Witt's area, what's going on in California that we see with riots with the LA County Sheriff's Office. What can we do better in our training and to help not make so much negative case law against law enforcement? For the common goal would be to make sure that we're closer to being on the same page. Because I will tell you, I've been training and been an instructor in law enforcement since 2005. And even when I did special weapons and tactics, East Coast SWAT compared to West Coast SWAT, it was like we were living in two different universes with tactics. Each has weaknesses and strengths, but what would be the common goal and commonalities that we could all get on the same page and not just learn from, but actually initiate and move forward to serve our community? So that's where I see it the most. I wouldn't say confrontation. I would say probably more confusion and where it gets convoluted would probably be in the behavioral health arena because everybody knows that we need it, but it's just different philosophies. And what we're doing with our try response, I'm willing to give our lesson plan and our ideas to everybody so they succeed. I think it's a newer area in law enforcement. We've been discussing it, but for people to actually implement a unit and to do things that we're pretty good at it, everybody's trying to get to that point. It's just not about funding. It's about what your model's going to be. I think that's where you would see probably the most difference within law enforcement. And I would say on this podcast that I make every other sheriff jealous, and they know I'm not in charge of the jail. That is great to say every time because every time I talk to the other sheriffs, they are so stressed out. And even at major county sheriffs of America, when we hear our partners and vendors talk about jail and food, man, I look at the other sheriffs and I'm not going to lie, I'm happy I don't have a jail. I have to put that out there.
No, understood. That's certainly huge, right?
Yeah.
The biggest risk and liability. But Sheriff Hansen, you were just talking about him. We had him as our guest a week or two ago, just before the National Sheriff's Conference. And Sheriff Hansen does not run the jail either, but like you, he's keenly interested in behavioral health for people in the community. And for him, he's looking at competency restoration. He knows how important it is to his residents, and he wants to cover all aspects of it. So kudos to you.
Yeah, and the competency and I talked to Sheriff Hansen, man, probably for the last year and a half or 2 years, and I don't know where he's at in his program. Apologize to him, I couldn't make NSA. It was my wife's birthday, but just in the jail, I would say I have 3% involvement in the jail when there's a death in the jail. So I discussed teamwork earlier. I'm trying to help the warden in terms of what are we looking for? What are we seeing as far as narcotics being brought in? What can we do better? And what can I do as a sheriff to help prevent some of the issues that he has to deal with in the jail, even though I'm not in charge of it? It's very important. And I would next time I need to actually bring the warden out to MCSA or NSA so he can get some advice.
Good. What do you think, Scott?
So in that, let me go back to behavioral health really quick if I can. So in the programs, are you seeing a a balance as far as the programs between inmates and your staff as well? And is there anything that stands out that you've had to adjust and tweak along the way, that there's new trends that are emerging, new challenges that are emerging from that?
I would say, and I'll answer the latter part of your question. I would say some political confusion and pushback in terms of behavioral health in the jail. And the reason I say that is anytime you mention a jail and people getting treatment in a jail, politicians in New Mexico and maybe other areas, they freak out, honestly. I think some of the best treatment comes at jail because, let's be honest, and I tell people, there are some people in jail, we can't be afraid to say it, they need to stay in jail so they can come and be productive in our community. People don't like to hear me say that, but I'm a very upfront person. I would say, on the contrary to what we're seeing, is we are so aggressive in behavioral health, and also the follow through for families. And of course, our use of force and deadly force has gone down. How does that translate to where if we arrest someone with behavioral health and they do go to jail because they committed a felony, just like what Sheriff Hansen is doing, politically, what laws do we need to have in place in terms of competency? And I'll give you a case study of, we had a gentleman that pulled up on one of our deputies out of nowhere and put a knife to his throat and said, "Deputy, you're going to have to kill me today." A completely unrelated call. Gets out of his vehicle, charges our deputy. He actually, another deputy hit him with a 40 millimeter launcher. That's where it started. We took him into custody, and it was, a felony, assault and battery on a peace officer. He went to jail, but because of his behavioral health issue, he was released the next morning, which we have not the greatest track record in New Mexico. That gentleman then went to an area to a gas station and started breaking out the windows of a mom at a gas station with their kids in a car with a bat. Our deputies responded again, once again, used less than lethal munitions and took him into custody. I told politicians, be it state representatives and senators, if we face this gentleman again, the community is going to be in an uproar when one of my deputies are going to use deadly force. And I told them, the next time our deputy faces this guy, he most likely, we're going to have to utilize deadly force. Let's be honest with it. They didn't like to hear it, but they understood. That case then went to the New Mexico Supreme Court for them to study. So it's about the collaboration on taking my frustration and the safety of my personnel and trying to make it something positive and impact, knowing that it might take a while. That's actually really starting to play in, and we're starting to see eye to eye on behavioral health and drug addiction, and then people that have behavioral health issues and self-medicating with either methamphetamine or fentanyl or heroin's coming back, and cocaine is also. Now, what do we do with those people? Because now that they're doing that, they might even become homeless, and we have the homeless situation in. And as Sheriff Stanek knows, law enforcement has looked to do everything. What resources, whether it's technology, whether it's policy, whether it's procedure, to take care of all these problems appropriately, but to get everybody on the same page. That's why I'm very big on collaboration. And the question that you answer, like, how does that go and translate into the jail? We're starting to see that now, because the people that we're letting out, they come right back to my deputies. Then those people go right back into the jail. So when I ran in my first term, everybody asked me, "Hey, where's your guys' statistics at? Where's your data?" We didn't keep anything. It was never transparent in our office. But what's funny, now that I have data, some politicians don't like to hear the data that I have because it goes against their narrative.
Yeah.
I can only report on the facts. So it's forcing people to come to the table, which we're doing, which is very positive, and having those very difficult discussions. And that's how we're moving forward in New Mexico.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's an unavoidable issue. And so, you have to approach it, and the data is going to tell the story. And then from there, and you've repeated this throughout, taking action, right? Then having the information to take action. In that, we have one more segment, and then I'm going to do some rapid fire questions, if I may. So we'll tee those up. Traveling around, you mentioned, knowing Sheriff Stanek, and maybe not name names. I won't add, and this will be a nice thing versus, mention anything, derogatory. But are there leaders, and maybe not just sheriffs, but are there leaders that you like to mention that have influenced your career so far? And why?
There are, someone's going to always go back to, I would say, he's huge in my life in terms of law enforcement and what to do right. But I would say, as far as currently, since I've taken the office, I've had a lot of interaction, just not with sheriffs, but a lot of chiefs, because we're different, because sheriffs are just better. Just kidding. I'm just saying is that chiefs, a lot of them are appointed and have different politics to deal with as far as answering to a mayor. I really try to ask them and get their point of view on what they would do differently. I would say Chief Neslett from San Diego, he's been great. I've had, of course, Sheriff Stanek. I ask him a lot of questions. I would say all the sheriffs that I'm really on, the ones out of Wisconsin, they see some different things. Like Danita Ball, people that I would never have expected, and people that have longer tenure than me and that have more of an urban area. I really like to get their mindset and what they're seeing and what they would do differently, specifically when it comes to leadership and personnel problems. I would say in law enforcement, I'm pretty sure every leader of any agency would say it. Personnel problems are, of course, probably going to be one of your biggest issues. My question is why? So the leaders that I see, I would say at least 60% of the major county sheriffs of America that I speak to at that conference, we really dig into that when we're at lunch or on a break, and I ask them advice and what their trends that they're seeing. Sounds funny and might a little wrong, but it makes me a little bit more comfortable that they're seeing the same thing I do, because in this day and age, I'm going on 30 years of law enforcement. I feel like I live in a twilight zone with the newer generation of law enforcement on why they do certain things.
Yeah.
It's just a matter, just like with technology. And I said the training arena where we're not on the same page.
Yeah.
I really want our people to use technology on day one. That's how they grew up. But then on the personnel side, everyone says they don't have the same work ethic, John, that you did when you were young. True in a sense. It's different. It's some of the person and the dumb decisions that they make, and we can go on and on for this for hours. Just trying to get the advice in different geographical areas and why they're seeing this and what the commonality is and how do we actually stop some of the behavior.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. What advice would you give to future sheriffs and deputies?
Never forget where you come from. You can sit at the table and look, it is such an honor and a blessing just for me to be speaking to both of you, but to be in the seat, I would say, in the chief of APD asked me, it's just different because you're elected by the people. They're your bosses. Mm-hmm. I speak for all the constituents that I can. I think they asked me at some oversight commission we had. They're like, well, who looks over you? I said, probably over 1 million voters. So
yeah, right.
and it was different for them, but it's such a blessing. Never forget where you come from, and also have fun. You're going to have good and bad days. I've only had 3 bad days. I look at the human side. I've had a couple press conferences where people will be like, hey, I don't think you should have said that. And I'll disagree with them, because I really believe that the people you serve, whether it's the rank and file or community, really need to see who John really is. And my advice is, when I leave this position, one, what difference in if I even left a legacy? That's very important to make sure you can do that. Can I see you in a war or a target and I avoid you, or can I speak to you because I did you wrong and dirty? And if I did, whether it was discipline, that's something in life. And let's be very honest, you have a small circle. When I leave this position, and it's a position of power and privilege, no one's going to care about me because I can't do anything for them. So who are your true friends, and what connections did you make, and what can you do to, even if you're not an elected official anymore? My advice would be never forget where you come from, and be you.
Agree.
The office is going to be there long after, Sheriff Allen leaves. Like in my county, I was number 27, the 27th sheriff in the county, and well over 100 years. 28th came and went fairly quickly. 29 is Sheriff Dewana Witt. When we greet each other, it's, hey, 27, how are you? Doing pretty good. 29, how are you? But there will be a 30 and a 31, a 32 and a 33, and so on and so forth, long after we're gone. So, you're just good stewards of the office at the time. Leave it a better place than how you found it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, thank you. Let's go through some rapid fire. I'll just pick a couple of these. So, what quality do you value most in a deputy?
Man, there's so many. The quality, you know what? Trustworthiness, but I cheat a little bit. trustworthiness and work ethic.
Yeah. Yeah. Two is acceptable. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Trustworthiness, work ethic, and honestly, my motto for my whole career, and I say keep it real. I know I'm the sheriff, and people aren't going to tell me everything. I get that. That's one thing I was naive to taking this position. When I go out there and ask you, be upfront. What can I do for you to make your job easier and better? Just be upfront about it. That way we can work on it.
Yeah, agreed. What gives you hope about the future of law enforcement?
Speaking right here, all the collaboration around the nation. I was naive to around not the influence, but the collaboration and friendships that I've made around the nation, and pulling just from different areas and different personalities and opinions. That gives me hope for the future, because I know that there's very good people in these positions to make everybody better, no matter how you do it. That's what gives me hope.
Yeah. I think you mentioned the word legacy earlier, so I'll end on this, and you can answer as please, obviously as freely as possible. When your career is over in any number of years from now, what legacy do you hope to leave behind?
The legacy is we talk about transparency all the time for politics and other areas. Was I easy to talk to and speak with and have a solution for your problem? And I would say I hope that legacy on that thought process. I tell everybody, cadets and personnel that sit in front of me on an oral board or a sheriff's review to be on the agency, I hope one of them one day takes my seat, and I hope I developed them correctly. That's the legacy that we want to give, that we gave someone the right career path and the guidance to succeed.
That's excellent. Sheriff Stanek, anything in closing you'd like to add?
I don't think so. Sheriff, I'm looking forward to seeing you in the fall. And we're going to be in Milwaukee with Sheriff Danita Ball at the Major County Sheriff's Conference. And, I'm one of those guys that like to take the sheriffs out to dinner so they can have a chance to collaborate amongst each other and talk technology, talk real life issues. And thank you for all you do on behalf of your residents in Bernalillo County.
Absolutely. Appreciate having it on. And we look forward to seeing everyone in the fall. Look forward to those collaborations and conversations always.
Well, Sheriff, thank you so much for your time. Enjoyed the conversation. I don't rank these, but this is near the top, I'm sure. Again, I just appreciate just your transparency, your openness. Again, just a real, genuine human being. And it's, I appreciate the level of service. I will meet you probably in the fall at that conference. So I'll make it a point to go up and shake your hand. But again, thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time, and hope you have a great rest of the day.
No, too. Thanks for having me on, and everyone have a good one.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Stay safe. Thanks, guys.
Hi, I'm Scott with Prime Health Services and Prime Corrections. And when I'm not hosting with Sheriff Stanek, I wanted to take a few moments and talk about our offsite inmate medical cost containment solution. So if you're running a jail and you have to take an inmate offsite for medical treatment of any type, have you ever paid full bill charges for that expense? Hopefully not. But if you have, let Prime help you out. So what we do every day, we receive many bills. I'll give you one example of a bill we just processed this week. This was for a county in Florida. This was for an air ambulance treatment. The total bill, $53,256. Through our scrubbing process and negotiations, we were able to reduce that bill down to $8,447.26. That is, that's a savings of 84%. So if you are looking to save on your offsite inmate medical expense, contact Prime. You can reach us via a link below. You can also send an email directly to corrections@primehealthservices.com. That's corrections@primehealthservices.com. Let Prime show you, and let Prime help you save money. Thanks, and have a great day.